Well, hello everyone. Welcome back. Earlier in the year, I posed the question, are mini bikes any good? Are they useful? Are they just a toy? That sort of thing. Well, this mini bike now has 1,000 kilometers on it, which doesn't sound like a lot, especially in Australia, but I can tell you 1,000 Ks on 12-inch wheels is a long way. I've got a lot of questions, I've got a few answers, I've had a lot of feedback from people. We're going to talk about, is it useful in day-to-day life? Have I found it easy to transport and keep with me? Is it just a toy? Is it just a showpiece? And I don't want to, but I'm going to dive a little bit into the political side of the Chinese motorcycle. I don't have a whole bunch to say on it, but in the same part, I have a little bit to say. Anyway, we're going to suit up and we're going to start with one of the strengths, which is, I'm sure you can work it out. It's going to be hilarious. Whee! The very first strength I've found with a bike on 12-inch wheels that's only this big is it goes anywhere. Not quickly, but it's very entertaining. I've parked this thing on footpaths. I've ridden it places it shouldn't go. Classic case in point. And it does it all in its stride. Whee! This is not a dirt bike. Oh god. Oh dear. Oh. Bum. Whee! Oh, big one. Woohoo! Okay, that's too much fun. Let's not do that again. Whew. Better have it before someone gets mad. Oh, he's already mad. Like all good YouTubers, let's start with the negative because that gets the most clicks. I've got a few things to say about it, and bearing in mind this is a $4,500 mini bike, so my complaints are a little bit first world, but as a financial investment it's just something to keep an eye on. The first thing is, I did the first service on this bike myself, just because I'm fairly well away from the CFMoto dealership, and well, I like to look after stuff myself. I know it's got a good oil in it now, but the oil I pulled out of it was reminiscent of metallic paint. Now, I have seen that with Chinese bikes before. Ryan from Fort9 famously did a test on particulate matter in first oil changes of different brands and found that the Chinese bike broke the machine that tests for particulate matter. Just by the naked eye, it still seems to be the case. I don't know if they put it down to self-clearancing, but now that it's got 1,000 Ks on it, another 500 on this oil, and on a good Motul 1040, it seems happy. It's not down on power, it doesn't seem to be chuffing and popping and farting and doing all sorts of things it shouldn't do. And I've ridden it, well, I live in the country, so I've ridden it like a country bike. Yes, I can tell you it does do highway, not very well, but it does. But what it does is it sits at 8,250 RPM, which, as you can imagine, for anything this side of a lawnmower, probably isn't the best way to treat an engine. But it does it, and it does it quite happily. But on that note, the other thing I can say is it has a horrendous timing chain rattle. Now, I've thought about adjusting the tensioner. The tensioner is a spring-loaded mechanical lockout tensioner, which is hilarious because That's the part I had to pay $300 to retrofit to my $20,000 Husqvarna to do a better job. Yet my $4,500 lawnmower with a license plate comes with one. Too hard as far as I'm concerned. I have spoken to CFMoto, people that have owned these bikes, and their consensus is, yep, it's noisy. It's a little air-cooled engine. It's noisy, get over it. As someone with probably way too much mechanical sympathy, that's just been a bit of a learning curve. Something really, really difficult to get over. And lastly, this is probably not a fault of the bike, but I'm sure it's a fault of some government regulator. It has a really, really horrendous power curve. Now, I'm sure that's emissions, I'm sure it's choked by that huge exhaust under the tail, but it makes power between 6,000 and 8,000 RPM, which is where you ride it realistically all day. But at 7,000, it has this like WRX-esque lull. And when you're really into it in traffic, second, third, fourth gear, where you want it to make power, you want it to catch up to traffic, it does if you ride it correctly. But 6 comes on really strong. 7, it sort of dips, you dip forward, and then it comes back again to about 8,100 RPM. That's where I've set the shift light. There's really no point revving it any higher. I'm sure that's a tuning issue. I'm sure someone in a suit that's never ridden a motorcycle before said that has to happen for noise, for emissions, for both. Who knows? But it's there, it's annoying. That's something I'm gonna look at to be tuned out. Keep in mind, as far as the drivetrain is concerned on this thing, I have left it as it is. I got it out of the box. The only things I've done is, well, paint, as you can see, because the style is reminiscent of a 90s 250 Super Screamer, like the CBR 250 Fireblade and that sort of thing. I painted the wheels and a couple of plastics white just to be a little bit more reminiscent, because as far as I'm concerned, if you've got 3 spokes, you've got to show you've got 3 spokes. But as far as the drivetrain is concerned, totally standard. It is as it is out of the box, and realistically it is how 90% of people are going to ride something like this, because they're buying it because they're not realistically mechanically minded, but their mate said if they buy a scooter to commute to work every day, they're going to defriend them. Realistically, that's all I've got to complain about. And now onto the good things, which is where this thing really shines, because like I said in the last video, you just don't take it too seriously. Yes, it makes timing chain rattle, and yes, it's got a power lull, and you can argue that it should make more power here, and what it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's a glorified scooter with a clutch. It looks cool. It's hilarious. And there are a lot of good things, and there are a lot of things that I didn't expect when I bought this thing off one photo I'd seen from Singapore. The first is, it's remarkably comfortable for something that has something reminiscent of clip-ons, a relatively high seat, relatively high pegs. It's meant to look like a sports bike that's been put in the washing machine for too long. It's not uncomfortable. I've ridden this thing for trips between 2 towns here. I work in one and live in the other, and decided that was a great idea, and it's a 45-minute commute at 100 k's an hour. This will not hold 100 k's an hour, but if you ride like a cyclist is supposed to, and when you're going uphill and you're a little bit slower, just over to the side, let some people past, it's absolutely fine. But where it differs from what I expected is, I get off at the end of a 45-50 minute commute at 100 k's an hour, and I don't think, oh my god, I shouldn't have done that. It's not particularly uncomfortable on the bum, even though I'm heavier than the average bear. It's not particularly uncomfortable on the wrist, because there's not a whole bunch of wind protection, so anywhere over about 70 or 80 k's an hour, you're held up by the wind. But it's nice and smooth, it's not buffety because the mirrors are low. It's actually really happy. Secondly, and this comes as a surprise to absolutely nobody, is the fuel economy. Now, the first tank I did on this, which was a run-in, I bought the thing with 2Ks on it. It did about 150Ks to a tank, and I thought, oh, well, you know, CFMoto claims 350. Realistically, we knew that wasn't going to happen. I'm a little bit of a thick boy. It hurts, like I thought it'd be better, but that's really not that bad. Second tank, 250Ks. Hang on, we might be onto something here. By the time I'd ridden it around, ridden it out on the road, stretched its legs, got it up to a 500K service, changed the oil, whatever else, it is now up to doing near as makes no difference 300Ks to a tank. And given that you ride the absolute nut off it every single time you get on, I think I measured it at 2.2 to 2.3 litres per 100Ks, and it's $11 to fill it up for another 300Ks. I'm impressed. I'm really impressed. I mean, everyone expected it, but I'm still impressed. I'm a little bit of a fuel economy nerd, and that makes my heart happy. Third thing about it is the gearing. Now, it's only geared to do, I don't know, I think it does 109 if you really ask it nicely, but the way it's geared for the power that it has no problem keeping up with traffic 90% of the time. I took this as a spare bike when I took my Husqvarna all the way down to Sydney. I say all the way, it's 2 hours away. But I took this on the trailer with me because it doesn't take up a whole bunch of room, and thought, well, instead of taking my big lumbering diesel SUV into the city all day while I wait for my big bike to get serviced, I'll take this with me, put some gear on, I'll ride into the city, ride around, get some photos, it'll be cool, and that'll do me for the day. I don't have to pay for parking, I don't have to pay for tolls because I can duck down back streets and blah, 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 whatever else. I took it with me, it didn't use any more fuel, it was remarkably comfortable for the 6 hours I spent on it. I did 170, 180 Ks all through the city. I stayed away from the freeway for obvious reasons, so I was all up the back roads, Windsor Road, and all the way down, and Gorson Gorge and all that sort of thing. It's great, right? 170 Ks, pretty comfortable for what it was, uses it no fuel whatsoever. But the biggest thing was, because of the gearing, it keeps up with traffic. I was actually able on this less than 2 foot wide bike to lane filter without feeling like I was about to be crushed. And that was really nice, because realistically, that's where this belongs. This doesn't belong out here doing 100 Ks an hour and driving on the side of the road and whatever else. It belongs in the city. It belongs in the middle of traffic, being an absolute menace to people. And it was really good at it. Stay there. But the main thing I love about this is it's the most useful, useless thing I think I've ever bought in my life. Realistically, if you look at it, 2 kinds of people are going to buy this thing, or anything like it, be it a Grom, a Monkey, whatever else. You're going to get, one, the person who does want to commute on it, but wants a clutch, wants something that's a little bit more fun, and doesn't want to turn up at the pub on a Friday night on a scooter because his mates won't like him anymore. And you'll get the enthusiast that's a little bit odd in the head. So you'll get somebody that either uses the thing every single day and rides the ring off it because it's cheap, or you'll get the sort of person that will take it out once and it will be stored in the living room or in the man cave or in the corner of a garage where it's nice and easy, right? I've been able to come into the middle of those two. I store it in my games room because it looks cool, and it kind of looks like a caricature of an old motorcycle. I say old, the 90s is considered old, I don't want to talk about it, but it looks cool, so I store it in there. But it's got 1,000 Ks on it, and I'm out riding it, and I have actually used it, and I have found it to be immensely convenient, whether it be, it fits on the trailer next to my big bike. I don't have a big trailer, like the big bike takes up the whole trailer, yet I can still put this on there and take it with me, and it's convenient that way. I've taken it on holiday with me on a rack on the back of the car, which I showed in the first video, because realistically it's under 110 kilograms wet. Anything worth its salt towing a trailer, you can put this on the rack, and it's very rare that you're going to find something, unless you got a Jimny, that doesn't have the tow ball down weight to be able to handle this and a 30-something kilo rack. And it makes no difference to the fuel economy of the car because it doesn't stick out either side, and realistically it's only the weight of, depending on who you keep as friends, 1 to 2 people, and it's easy to get on and off. So I go for a holiday, the missus wants to do something else, go away, go, okay, cool, you can do your thing. We're usually in somewhere that's got better roads than we do. You get on this, go for a blat, and you remember, even though you're holding up traffic usually, is that you're on something that's a caricature of a sport bike, so it still has upright pegs, it still has fairly down handlebars. You can still throw it into a corner on scooter tyres and have a blast. And it's just so convenient. It fits in my work vehicle, so when I have to take it back for sick days, whatever reason, I take this with me, blad it back home, it costs me nothing in fuel, it's easy to cart around, and at the end of the day, it takes 4 minutes to wash. I put it back on a paddock stand in my games room next to my computer, and it sits there on the trickle charger for a month and looks cool. It does all those things so well. But the elephant in the room is who made this? The aspect of the Chinese motorcycle. And this is a big thing. And I do understand why it's a big thing, but I don't understand why it's a big thing. I won't go too far into it because I'm frankly not that interested in it, but the consensus is that because you're buying a Chinese motorcycle, a child slave worker has made it for $38 and the CCP is profiting off every penny you pay over that. Are they really? If they are, they're putting some real effort into it, because CFMoto as a whole, and I'm gonna caveat this by saying, I approached CFMoto for a second one of these to put Jack on to ride to Phillip Island, and CFMoto basically gave me the corporate version of new phone who dis. So I'm not going to stand here and say CFMoto this and CFMoto that, because they have quite a reputation of buying out influencers. I have 100 and something subscribers. Realistically, they're not going to buy me out. But this makes no difference. It's not sponsored. But CFMoto is coming out with some really, really cool gear, like the 675 and the Voom that they won't answer whether they're going to get it in Australia or not, but a 4-cylinder 500 to compete with the ZX4RR, but it's going to be at least $2,000 to $3,000 cheaper. That's cool. In a previous video we rode the 450 and the 800 MT. They were great motorcycles for what they were. You know, I turned up on a $25,000 Husqvarna adventure bike with realistically the same engine in it. Got on the 800 MT and thought, oh, this is pretty good, this thing. And got on the 450 MT, it's even better. And they're getting nothing but rave reviews from people who own them, not people who've been paid to ride them. Like, they're putting so much effort into making a cool product when so many manufacturers now aren't. They'll make one frame and put 4 or 5 different versions of motorcycles in it. It's like, okay, we'll take the rear fender off a Kawasaki Eliminator. Oh, look, now it's a bobber. Okay, cool. Like, the thing wasn't that exciting in the first place, but, you know, they're taking that 450 270 degree parallel twin, they're putting it in everything, but they're changing frames, they're changing this, they're making it look cool, they're making a statement with young people on it. Like, it's cool. And are they really doing that for the CCP to profit? Are they really getting 7-year-olds to put them together? I don't know, man. I don't think so. But I don't know a whole bunch, to be honest. what I can say is this thing doesn't feel like it's put together by a 7-year-old, and by far and away it would be the worst build quality of the CFMoto range. This as a toy versus the 450 MT or the 450 CLC or the Bobber or the 800 or the 700 CLX, the build quality is comparable to a bike you would pay a substantial amount more for. But I don't know, man, I get a lot of looks on this bike. I get a lot of kids taking photos and thumbs up, and you always get that one guy that's like, oh, the Chinese bike, you know, you must be go for slave labour and you're supporting the Chinese communist government. And, no, mate, I just didn't want to pay $8,000 for a monkey. All in all, we come to a conclusion pretty quickly, but realistically there's not much bike, so we're not going to harp on it too much. There's not a lot of features, but there is a lot to love about it. And for something you're realistically going to spend, it's the money you saved or some money you inherited or whatever else, for something that sits around and on a Sunday you think, yeah man, that'd be cool, I'd love to go out in the sun and have a take it to a show and everyone looks at it, everyone takes photos of it. Or you just want, I don't know, cheap alternate transportation that you can whack on the back of the car and take with you without having to lug a trailer around, or something that's just cheap, fun, where you just want to look at it. It doesn't matter. It's cool. And because due to the government regulations that came in, we lost all these mini bikes in 2021. We lost the Grom, we lost the Monkey, we lost the Benelli, even though we never found it in the first place, realistically, because they're still in dealerships, brand new. But the fact that CFMoto's actively gone to the effort to make sure that this is a global sale bike with dual channel ABS and with fuel injection and where it meets emissions regulations and whatever else, it's cool. If they're supporting the communist government, I don't know, man, I'm sorry, but I don't know any better. I also saw a couple of people in the comments of the last video, the first ride I did of this bike, that said, thanks man, I've gone and bought one. I'd really love to hear from you guys again. How have you found it? Have you modified it? Have you ridden it a lot? Is it parked next to your television at home in the lounge room? I don't know. Write down in the comments section below. I really want to hear what you've done with it. Don't go! Because as far as I'm concerned, man, cheap fun. Really cheap fun.